Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's March 14th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And looking at the daily chart, you can see it looked like we were going to really rally out of here. We had a pretty good rally, but we sold off of those highs, backed off. We rallied back again, and it looks like there's about 30 minutes left in the trading day. It looks like we're going to close off the highs. But important part is notice we couldn't break above these last couple of highs here, so still a lot of sellings coming in around that price level. We did relieve some of the oversold conditions. Usually I would expect us to bounce more than that. Maybe we'll come back and test this breakout area before we go lower. We could just turn lower again because things look pretty bearish right now. So we'll just have to see what happens. But just kind of you can see we're just kind of hanging around down here. We're not rallying out of there. We did that one time before over here. Notice how we hung around in there before we finally got some momentum and rallied out of there. So we'll see what happens here. We're still finding support down here in this area, but we're still finding some resistance. The last three times we tried to rally out of here, we found strong resistance right around the, I would say probably 39.40 area, somewhere right in there. Uh, but we can't seem to breach that area. A lot of selling comes back in. You can see we sold off from that high then. Same thing here, sold way off of that high. And today we sold back off of that high. Of course, there's 30 minutes left to go. This bar could change. But generally by this late in the afternoon, you usually don't get a whole lot of movement. So but we'll flip over to the 2,000 tick chart and see what that looks like and go through the trades. There weren't a lot of trades today, especially early on. I mean, it was kind of tough trading. So there just wasn't anything solid there. But we'll go through all that in just a second. Let's flip over to the other. Okay, here's a look at it. You can see we started off sideways. This is a news item. You need to be flat. And we off of that news, we got a spike and channel up. Had a break here, moved to a new high, and then it sold off sharply for just a little bit. And then we had some buying come in here late, uh, between 2 and 3 o'clock, and then it's backed off of that some. So again, there's still 35 minutes left in the trading day, so we could continue to push higher. We could push lower. Who knows? Um, it really kind of looks like a range day, but this was a big move up and then a big move down, and then so there's just a lot of mixed trading in here, and I'd expect more of that as we go along because the volatility is probably going to be high. But early on, there's not many trades here, so it didn't really pick up till after lunchtime. There's a few after lunch, but early on, there's a couple of trades here, but not many. So, but you can see what it looks like there. Clearly a spike and channel up, and then a big trend down, and followed by another big trend up. So it's kind of a range type day, although we're not trading within the overnight highs and lows. We got way outside of that. Um, so it's not like a regular range type day, although I would call this mixed trading and somewhat sideways. So, I mean, we're going to close up for the most part. At least it appears we're going to close up. I guess that could change before the day's over, but it looks like we're going to close higher today. So it's more of while there's a lot of mixed trading here, it's more of an up type day. While that's not real evident on this chart, I think if you go back to the daily chart, you can see even though we sold what close, or it looks like we're going to close way off the highs, we still had mostly up day. So keep that in mind. But let's zoom in here, go through the trades, and we'll wrap this day up. And I wouldn't have traded anything until after this news item today. The CPI stuff, this is all big time uh, uh, stuff to do with economy and inflation and so forth, and those are going to probably bring up a lot of high volatility. So be real careful. Be flat. Of course, so I marked it flat from about 7:15. And it looked like it was kind of settling back down in here just before 8 o'clock. So maybe you take this trade here. There's a first entry, second entry, and that does kind of confirm this new trend line. I don't think I would wait till that closed and go long, But when it broke lower, then turned up and created this engulfing bar, you might go long one tick above that bar. Again, I wouldn't go long above this bar, even though it would have still worked out. I wouldn't do it. Then we just kind of chop around here. We do take off, but no setups there. And then we're just chopping sideways. You finally do get 1, 2, 3, kind of a triple test there with a nice signal bar. Just make sure you got room to get out here. If you do, you might take that trade. Again, it's real close there. Let me just measure it and see. Yeah, there's just enough to get out right here. There's actually a tick or so to spare. So maybe you take that trade. Again, it's not a high probability trade or anything, but it's one you might take. And you can see we're just kind of chopping weekly higher, and then we turn down. That one's tempting, but everything's still above the EMA here, so I don't think I take that trade. And then this is an inside bar, so you can't really take it. And then we're just chopping sideways again. You just can't enter in this kind of stuff. Of course, we turn down up here, but there's no real shorts to try to. There's a lower high here, but there's strong support across there. Not much room. There is a second entry short here, but on my chart, not a very good signal bar. If you had a good signal bar there, by all means, take that short. It's too bullish on my chart. Then, of course, we bounce off the trend line a couple of times here. We get what looks like maybe you get a close outside, but that's not convincing, so I'd still stay with the trend until finally we do get another close here, and that one's pretty convincing there. But there's a higher low here, what looks like maybe a reversal here, but with everything below the midline, and we've turned down there 1, 2, 3, 4 times, I don't think I would want to go long right there. And you can see, even though we push through there, it doesn't go very far before it turns and comes down here and gets a break. Now, this is a second entry. Notice the first entry, and you run down here and you get a nice bullish signal bar on a second entry with the break of the trend line. So prices will probably try to retest the original high, which is this spot right here. So I like going long there. Doesn't go very far. Looks like we're going to go lower, and then you get another second entry long. Notice that high, first entry, and then second entry. It's not a great setup, but it is a second entry long. Fairly decent signal bar. It looks kind of like a doji, but it closes way. It just happened to open and close in the upper part of the bar. So I think that bar is fine. It is a second entry long. That's a pretty nice move up. And then we just chop sideways again. You might say, hey, there's a triple test here, but I just think that's too tight. I don't think you want to go long right into those highs. I think that's way too risky. If you draw the little range, it's a little easier to see. But you can see that. You don't want to go long into that support. It would have worked, but you had to fight it out here, and there's just a good chance you could get stopped out. Same thing here. We finally get a little room to scalp out, and you get a really, I looked at it like this is one move here, 2, 3, this triple test basically, with a nice signal bar with enough room to get out. And again, you get about enough for a scalp there. There's an engulfing bar here, and maybe you enter that on the engulfing bar. I don't think I go long right into those highs there. And it still would have worked anyway. But maybe as an engulfing bar, it breaks lower and turns up. Maybe you go long there. It's, you might argue for that to be green. And you might say, too, this is a failure here, but it's not really where you're looking for a failure. It looks more sideways than anything. There's enough room to get out on this one, but technically you could have drawn this as a range. I would have probably drawn it just like so. And if that's the case, by the time you go long, you're going long right into that. And you sure wouldn't want to take a reversal failure type setup here. It's definitely not a reversal. Maybe you say it's a continuation pattern, but it doesn't set up as one. even though it does continue on. And of course, it turns down and it just drops on down. You really don't get any setup there. Then it turns up. It looks like you're going to get a failure here, but then you get an inside bar, and so no real failure set up. So just nothing really going on here. It's just prices are just flopping, chopping around, and flip-flopping, and there's no sense of direction. We do have this channel to give us a little bit of help, but notice we didn't get to the high there. We didn't get to the low here. We didn't get to the low here. We finally get to the high. But of course, we've already had our close outside here and a new high by the time we get to here. But the prices just keep fighting higher. But there's not really any setups there. But anyway, we finally top out up here. There's a failed second entry long right here. Notice this is a double top, first entry, second entry. I didn't mark that trade. It's one you might mark green. Your entry would be one tick below the little doji looking bar, but your safety stop has to go above this bar. That's technically where your stop goes. But the trigger would be one tick below a one tick break below that inside bar with it looks like a doji. And of course we're just chopping on down, but again I don't see any setups here. You get a second entry here, notice the new low, first entry, second entry, no signal bar, and you do get a lower high here. Maybe you take this trade. There's enough room to get out. It's a possibility because it does confirm that trend line. I didn't really like it in real time. I'll mark it green. But then you get, there's a new swing high here, so you get a first entry, second entry that fails. Technically, yeah, it does. It fails right there. And then you also get a first entry, second entry. So this is a failed second entry long and a second entry short with a really bearish bar. It makes a lower high here, but no setup. You might get a runner on this one because you kind of had to ride this little sideways stuff out. And then the bottom just falls out. Again, there's no entries way down here. You get a little overshoot. I didn't draw it coming back, but there's a trend line coming back here. And there's no real setup, though. It's just a first entry, and it drops straight down and reverses. I don't think you want to be going long here. We're better off to wait for prices to get back to here and then look for a short. And you can see you got a new low there, and you get a first entry. Technically, there's a second entry there, but I still like this entry right here. It really looks like a first entry and a second entry to me. Even though it breaks lower there, that looks like all one move up. So I treated that like a second entry. I think it's two legs up, but it's kind of a little two-legged jog in the middle there. But anyway, I probably should have marked that green, but it's right off the key entry point where we've been turning down. You do have a break here and a couple of legs up to a new high, so I like that trade being that far away from the EMA. It's close. You could argue for it to be green, but I still like it if you understand what's going on there. You can clearly see we get a two-legged break, and then it looks like two legs up to a new high, and then it turns down again. And this would have been a nice move down. Clearly, you probably get a runner here, and then we're just chopping sideways again. I don't see any shorts there, and you don't think you want to go long yet. So just nothing to trade there. And it does drop on down, corrects. Just a first entry there, and then finally you get a second entry short here. I like that one. Nice bearish bar, lower high, and a second entry short. I really thought we'd get more out of it than that. It gets an easy scalp, but that's about it, and then it takes off. There is a higher low right here, but look how sideways looking that is. And it is a failure, but I think it's just too congested and too sideways. Of course, we run up, we get a closeout, two legs correction and a close outside, then we run to a new high. Again, I don't see anything in here, long or short. You do get your breakout here and make a new high all in one move. Maybe you take that. I think you're better off to wait on the lower high, which comes right here. And I like going short right there better. And you can see it takes on off this time. And that takes us into our 2:30 hour. So actually this looks like this is closing a little early. I don't know, hang on just a minute. I'm gonna pause this just a minute. Okay, here it is. I seem like every time I flip over to the new chart, my time changes on me. This should be turning gray at 2:30, and it was turning gray around 2 o'clock instead, a few minutes after. But anyway, we continued on down here. Still no setups here really to go short, and you get a break and a new low. And we actually make a new low on the break of this khaki channel, and there's your break and your new low, and then you see we get this little failed break lower. It gives you this big bullish bar way away from the EMA. That's the ones I'm often talking about that lead to a nice reversal. So if you catch this, you probably catch a reversal. So maybe it's worth taking. It's a little risky because you're trying to pick a bottom, so it's a little more advanced. But if you understand what's going on, sometimes those are worth trying to catch them. And you can see this would have been a nice move. There was a failure here too on a second entry, but this is after 2:30 and it looks really congested. So it didn't change anything by adding the rest of that there. Unfortunately, we had a second entry here, but no signal bar, a high or low here. But again, just kind of an outside bar. It doesn't really set up very well. So it didn't really change anything by adding that little extra 30 minutes or whatever there. But I have that corrected now. It'll be right going forward. But anyway, there it is. That's how I saw it today. Kind of a weak trading day. Even though there's a lot of movement here early, there's just not a lot of setups, and it's hard. It's real choppy and real volatile, and you can get stopped out real easy. So you have to wait on the really good trades, and there just weren't many of them. So if you struggle to find a trade early on, or even all day, because there's not a lot of trades all day, but if you felt like you were struggling to find a trade, it's because it was not a lot of setups there. It's just kind of all of this, even though it's trending higher, anytime you start coming back and forth below and above the EMA, that's mixed trading. So this is a very weak uptrend. Even though it's a spiking channel, it's kind of a weak sideways up channel. So you could play this both ways if you got a really good setup, although it's generally you're better off just to stick with a trend. So but when you get that sideways mixed trading, you can trade it both ways. Now here we're clearly trending down. Had a little correction here, and then we're clearly trending lower again before we get another correction and trending lower. So but here we're mostly trending up, but there's some fairly nice trends down that go below the EMA temporarily, and it happens multiple times. So it's kind of a mixed trading, sideways kind of uptrend, if that makes sense. But you can trade that both ways if you really want to. Just make sure you're taking good trades if you take shorts, if it's an uptrend, and if it's a weak downtrend, and you're taking longs, make sure they're strong setups. That's all I would say. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.